Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're inviting you to step back a bit.
Yeah.
Think about something really profound with us.
Something huge.
Exactly. Something so woven into our everyday lives, we often we don't even notice it. Think about your day, your commute, the news you see, the language you use even.
Right.
How many parts of your life, the ballot box, the office, subtle things in ads, even your personal freedoms, how much of that is shaped by this massive social transformation?
A transformation that's been unfolding for, centuries, really?
Yeah, hundreds of years. It's a fight, a movement so long-standing, so impactful.
Yeah.
The effects are they're just there, ingrained, almost invisible, but everywhere.
It's pretty striking when you stop and think about it, isn't it? We go about our routines, make choices, deal with systems that have been fundamentally reshaped, and we rarely pause to think about the incredible historical battles that actually made these realities possible. We're talking, of course, about the fight for women's equality. It's genuinely one of the longest, most persistent, and I'd say quietly revolutionary social movements in human history.
Quietly revolutionary, I like that. It speaks volumes about collective action, about determination.
Absolutely.
And that really sets up our core question for this deep dive, doesn't it?
Yeah.
How has this fight for gender equality fundamentally reshaped the very fabric of our societies? Challenging those deep-seated cultural assumptions, influencing the patterns, the norms we live by today.
It's more than just history, dates, and names.
Right. It's like the social detective work. We're trying to uncover these hidden dynamics, the things that quietly define our modern world, trying to see those invisible threads.
And connecting it to the bigger picture, it's about understanding how things like identity, community, power, how they've been constantly redefined over time.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, huge progress has been made. Women vote, they work, they lead, they have much more autonomy. But then you look at things like the gender pay gap, which just won't seem to close, or disparities in political power, or the persistence of gender-based violence.
But it clearly shows the journey isn't finished.
Not at all. And the evolution of feminism itself, moving from those early legal fights to these really complex intersectional understandings of gender and power, that whole evolution is still actively shaping modern society.
Okay, so let's dive in. Let's try and trace this from the start. Where did this incredible transformation begin?
Yeah.
I mean, the story of women pushing back against patriarchal constraints, that started way before the word feminism even existed, right?
Oh, absolutely. Long before. This isn't some modern invention. It's a continuous thread of resistance throughout history.
But the organized movement, what we now call the first wave, where and when did that really take shape?
So that formally emerges in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. And this initial push, it was very laser focused, primarily on getting fundamental legal rights, especially the right to vote. It was about becoming a political person, having a voice in democracy, not just being seen as, an extension of your father or husband.
And the key figures here, people like Susan B. Anthony, Elizabeth Cady Stanton in the U.S., Emmeline Pankhurst in the U.K. They weren't just asking nicely, were they?
Asking nicely, not even close.
What were some of the methods? What kind of opposition did they face beyond just the legal arguments? How did their actions actually shift public perception back then?
That's such a critical point. Their activism was often seen as radical, even shocking for the era. We're talking huge public protests, marches, civil disobedience, hunger strikes where women were horrifically force-fed in prison. They endured jail time, faced violence from police, from angry crowds. These were not easy wins. They were incredibly hard won, often involving huge personal sacrifice and immense public struggle. Emmeline Pankhurst's famous line, "Deeds, not words," really captures that intensity.
Yeah, it really underscores the desperation and the commitment. And it makes those big milestones feel even more significant. So in the U.S., all that relentless activism leads to the 19th Amendment in 1920. Women get the vote nationwide.
A massive victory.
And in the UK, it was a bit more staggered.
Yeah, women over 30 got the vote in 1918, partly linked to their contributions during World War I, and then full suffrage came 10 years later in 1928.
And you mentioned this wasn't just a US or UK thing.
Not at all. It was truly global. Women all over the world were fighting for these same rights. New Zealand was actually the first self-governing country where all women won the right to vote, way back in 1893.
1893, wow.
Yeah. Then Finland, Australia, Many others followed. It really highlights this kind of universal desire for political voice, for recognition, a shared human impulse for self-determination, you could say.
So the vote is largely secured in many places.
Yeah.
That initial mystery, political disenfranchisement, it's partly solved, but then a whole new layer of cultural puzzle seems to emerge.
Exactly.
Which brings us neatly to the second wave of feminism. This really kicks off in the 1960s, 1970s. And this wave, it seems to go way beyond just legal rights. It expands into this much broader range of social, personal, cultural issues.
It really does. And what's fascinating is how connected it was to other things happening at the time.
Like what?
Well, think about the civil rights movement, the anti-war protests, the sexual revolution.
Yeah.
All that ferment in the 60s and 70s.
Right, a lot was changing.
Feminism drew a lot of energy and, frankly, strategy from those movements. That broader societal questioning created fertile ground for feminism to expand its agenda, questioning everything from marriage roles to economic structures.
And key figures people might know from this era. Betty Friedan, Gloria Steinem, maybe Simone de Beauvoir from a bit earlier, but still influential.
Absolutely. But if you had to point to one catalyst, one thing that really ignited the second wave.
It has to be Friedan's book, right? The Feminine Mystique in '63.
Absolutely pivotal, yes.
How did that book specifically manage to galvanize so many women into a collective movement? What was its magic?
Friedan's genius, I think, was in identifying and naming this widespread feeling. This sense of dissatisfaction among many, particularly middle-class, educated women who felt trapped in domestic roles despite having, everything.
The problem that has no name, she called it.
Exactly. And by naming it, she showed women they weren't alone. Their unhappiness wasn't a personal feeling. It was a shared systemic issue. It turned that private, often isolating angst into a public political problem.
Ah, okay. It created a collective consciousness.
Precisely. It transformed individual frustration into a collective call for change.
And from that shared understanding, a whole new set of issues really came to the forefront, changing women's actual lives.
Definitely. Think about the fight for reproductive rights. Roe v. Wade in 1973 in the U.S., legalizing abortion. That gave women unprecedented control over their own bodies, their futures.
Huge. And then there was the push against workplace discrimination.
Massive. And challenging the silence around domestic violence, bringing sexual harassment out of the shadows. These weren't just legal fights anymore. They were deep cultural battles, challenging norms that had existed for centuries.
The workplace in particular seems like a major focus. You had laws like the Equal Pay Act in '63, Title VII, the Civil Rights Act in '64.
Crucial legal frameworks, yes, designed to open doors, ensure fairer treatment.
But, and here's where that cultural detective work comes in again, despite those laws.
The pay gap persists. Still, today, women often earn significantly less than men for similar work.
Why is that, do you think, if the laws are there?
Well, it really reveals that laws alone often aren't enough, right? You have these ingrained cultural patterns, systemic biases about the value of women's work, about leadership potential, about caregiving responsibilities.
Things that laws struggle to reach.
Exactly. Cultural change often lags way behind legal change. It shows the complexity of dismantling these deep structures.
Which leads us into another fascinating evolution, the sort of interconnectedness and the rise of digital voices in modern feminism. Let's talk about the third wave.
Right, emerging around the 1990s. And this wave is really characterized by embracing diversity and what we now call intersectionality.
Anyway, so moving away from the idea that all women share the exact same experience.
Precisely. It drew heavily on new ways of thinking, postmodernism, post-colonial theory that emphasized multiple perspectives and challenged those big universal narratives.
Right.
Like the idea that gender is the only thing or even the primary thing shaping a woman's life. The third wave brought this profound realization that race, class, sexuality, disability, nationality, all these things intersect with gender.
Creating vastly different experiences of oppression or privilege.
Exactly. This shift aimed to make feminism truly representative of all women's diverse experiences, not just those of, say, white middle-class straight women.
And this is where thinkers like bell hooks become really important, arguing for a feminism that tackles racism and classism head-on, and Judith Butler challenging basic ideas about gender itself.
Very influential figures. And crucially, this is where Kimberly Crenshaw coins the term intersectionality back in 1989.
Explain that concept a bit more. Why was it such a game changer?
Intersectionality basically recognizes that different forms of oppression like racism, sexism, homophobia, transphobia, classism, They don't operate in isolation.
Okay.
They're interconnected, they overlap, they compound each other. So, for example, a Black woman's experience of sexism might be fundamentally different from a white woman's because of how race and gender bias interact.
Got it. It forces a more nuanced understanding.
It does. It made feminism far more inclusive, more relevant to women from all sorts of backgrounds.
Yeah.
It helped build solidarity around shared struggles, even if the specifics look different.
And alongside this theoretical shift, we started seeing new kinds of activism taking shape.
Definitely. Particularly online activism. Social media campaigns start emerging as these really powerful new tools.
Bypassing traditional media.
Exactly. Well, it wasn't just about individuals sharing stories, though that was powerful. It used platforms like Twitter to create this undeniable collective testimony. It showed how technology could amplify individual voices into this massive roar that institutions just couldn't ignore anymore.
Right.
It brought unprecedented attention to how widespread sexual harassment and assault really are across all industries. And importantly, it fostered more inclusivity by highlighting diverse experiences and creating this sense of shared community among survivors. It really forced a public reckoning.
Reshaped the conversation in a fundamental way.
Absolutely. In previous ways perhaps couldn't, simply due to the available technology.
Okay, so we've traced these waves, this lineage of thought and action. But the impact of feminism, it creates these wider ripples, doesn't it? Shaping society far beyond specific campaigns or laws.
Oh, completely.
And it's crucial to remember, this isn't just a Western story.
Absolutely not. That's a critical point. While we often focus on U.S. or European movements, feminism has flourished globally. Think about women's rights movements in India, fighting caste discrimination and violence. Or in Brazil, where activists campaign against femicide and for land rights. Or Iran, where women have shown incredible courage protesting for basic freedoms.
Often facing even greater risks.
Far greater obstacles, often. It just demonstrates that universal desire for dignity and equality.
And what about feminism's relationship with other social movements? You mentioned the civil rights movement earlier.
Yeah, it's incredibly rich and reciprocal. Feminism has influenced and been influenced by movements for LGBTQ+ rights, environmental justice, economic justice. There's a lot of cross-pollination.
How does that work in practice?
Well, that concept of intersectionality we talked about, that came out of feminist thought, particularly Black feminist thought, and it's deeply informed, say, the LGBTQ+ rights movement.
Ensuring the experiences aren't overlooked.
Exactly, making sure the struggles of queer people of color or trans individuals are central. It creates stronger, more inclusive alliances across different justice causes.
What about the cultural impact? Pop culture seems saturated with feminist ideas now, sometimes explicitly, sometimes subtly.
Oh, massively. Think about literature. Margaret Atwood's The Handmaid's Tale isn't just a book. It's become this global symbol in debates about reproductive rights and state control.
True.
Or TV shows, from groundbreaking ones like Sex and the City decades ago to more recent ones exploring female friendship, ambition, sexuality in new ways.
Challenging old stereotypes.
Definitely. And music, too. Think of artists like Beyoncé weaving feminist themes into massive pop anthems. It makes complex ideas accessible, empowering millions. It's not just entertainment. It shapes how we see gender.
And economically.
Yeah.
The impact seems undeniable there, too.
Huge. Women's increased participation in the workforce, better access to education, more control over reproduction, these have boosted global economic growth significantly.
Women entering fields they were once barred from.
Right. Medicine, law, tech, business leadership. It diversifies those fields, changes their cultures, but, and here's that persistent puzzle again.
The inequalities remain.
They do. In pay, in leadership roles, access to funding for female entrepreneurs, the unequal burden of unpaid care work.
Shows that just opening the door isn't always enough.
Exactly. You need to address those deep cultural norms about gender roles, about the value placed on different kinds of labor.
And finally, the political impact. Beyond just suffrage.
It's been substantial. Feminism has directly influenced policy on reproductive rights, workplace discrimination, parental leave, domestic violence laws. It brings entirely new perspectives into political debate.
Changing priorities, changing who gets heard.
Fundamentally reimagining who holds power and what government should do.
So looking ahead, what are the big challenges? Where does feminism go from here?
Well, the landscape is complex. You have huge issues like climate change, which disproportionately affects women, widening economic inequality, intense political polarization in many countries, even direct authoritarian backlashes against women's rights.
That sounds daunting.
It is. But if history teaches us anything, it's that feminist movements are incredibly resilient and adaptable. They've faced obstacles before and evolved.
The core principles remain relevant.
Absolutely. Equality, justice, human dignity, those are timeless. They're as crucial today as they were when this whole struggle began.
It really is a powerful testament to collective action, isn't it? That change, even slow, incremental change, is possible.
Definitely.
So a final thought for you, listening to this deep dive. As you go about your day, navigating your own social landscape, what subtle things do you notice now? What unspoken cultural norms or maybe persistent gender inequalities stand out in your community, your workplace, maybe even in your own family?
And perhaps think about how understanding this long, complex historical fight, how might that empower you?
Yeah, empower you to maybe envision or even help shape the next chapter of human equality in your own corner of the world.